got some.
Yo, can you hear me?
Are you over 18?
Yeah, I am.
Sure.
All right, so there's no good reason to believe in God. So, okay. Where do you think you came from?
I don't know what that question's asking.
Huh? What do you mean?
I'm not clear what you're asking.
Like, how did you think you were born? Like, of course,
I was born from my parents?
Yeah, of course, but like, take that and go all the way back, right?
Okay.
There has to be two people who started the world, you know what I mean?
With incest?
What do you mean incest?
Yeah, like, if you think two people, yeah, that's just... So, I'm not clear. Are you trying to argue that God explains that better?
Yeah.
No, why is that?
What do you mean?
So you understand, in order for there to be evidence, there has to be some symmetry breaker between the constraints of range of this hypothesis and the compatible datum, right? So it's going to be possible that there exists a God that has no desires to make humans or a world, or that there's a world independent of a God that both exists, but there's no correlation between their, like a God ontologically manifesting a universe. So there's not going to be any evidence that's going to be in support or in light of the hypothesis that a God makes humans, right? So I'm not clear why you're presupposing that just because there's going to be this hypothesis that's compatible with the phenomena of the ontology of life, that therefore a God is going to be an adequate explanation, right? So do you have an argument for why it's the case that this is more likely than, say, evolution or anything like that?
Okay, wait, listen. So you believe that I'm just going to talk about something else, right? You believe that all religions are fake, right? All religions are not real.
I take all religions to be incoherent. There's not going to be a way of interpreting any religion.
So yeah, is it yes or no? Do you believe that they're fake or real?
I don't know what that means to say if they're fake or real.
Fake means they just got made up by some random person.
What I would presume you're asking me is it going to be the case that the creators of some biblical literature were either intending to deceive someone or had because it could be logically possible that the people who wrote these textbooks had the belief in a God. Doesn't mean it's the case that a God did exist.
Okay, so you're saying that the books of the religion, they just came from random people who believed in God, right?
Well, I'm not positing that. I'm saying that's logically possible. But it's incoherent to posit that it was a God that existed.
It's a simple question.
I know, I'm answering it.
Okay, but you're answering it, like, you're not saying yes or no.
Well, you understand to say yes or no is to make adjudication, right? And what I'm saying is not an adjudication, right? I'm saying I'm agnostic. But if you're asking about my credence, which is going to be the degree in belief towards the degree in attitude towards the proposition being either true or false, then yes, I'll take it that I'm more inclined to believe it's false, given that I take God to be logically incoherent. So I don't even think gods can exist.
Okay, so you're saying religions are false. All right, good. So...
No, I just explained that's not what I'm saying, but I'm not clear. Are you going to make like a case for why God exists?
In God, but you believe that religions like talk about God?
Yeah, just give me an argument as to why you believe that God exists.
I believe that God doesn't exist.
The overwhelming amount of evidence.
Okay, give me some.
Yeah, so if you're going to be committed to an Abrahamic triomni God, the issues with that is that omniscience is going to be logically impossible if you're to say that God exists independent of a world, right? That God that he didn't exist in a universe, and that he manifested the universe, right? So first of all, we understand a universe to be an enclosed system of the totality of sets of elements within that. And if God is external to that, that's going to be already a contradiction, given the containment relation metaphysically would contain God, but also the fact that if it is the case that God is omniscient, yet isn't going to be acquainted with a world for which he furnishes mental content, which is to say he's an epistemic externalist, that's going to mean that Cartesian scenarios are possible. And that leads that God's epistemic system is going to be a proposition to whether it's errorless or not. And given that a Cartesian scenario is going to be an epistemically indeterminate proposition, that just means it's impossible to have omniscience. So that's just going to disprove God exists in two ways, right? The fact that he's going to be outside a set, and the fact that he's going to have omniscience with an internalist epistemology. So that's going to be incoherences for that view. But also, it seems like God explains nothing at all. There's not a single thing that God explains. Now, you posited the existence of life, but obviously, that's not going to be predicted under the God hypothesis, right? Saying that there's a God doesn't predict that God desires to make living organisms that praise him, right? So first of all, you're going to need to either provide the motivations for God desiring to make human, or you're just going to say there is a motivation you don't have access to, and that's going to be a just so story, and I can just dismiss that with Hitchens razor. Wait. So just give me a formal argument for why you believe a God exists.
I did not understand a single word you said.
Yeah, I know, because you're not. You don't care enough to read into philosophy, and it's like
I do, bro. You use big words, bro. Like, what did you?
Okay, so epistemology is just epistemology is the system of knowledge, right? Internalist epistemology just means
speak in simple words, please.
Yes, yeah, I'm defining the terms. I'm explaining what I just said, since you said it's a mouthful, right? Epistemology is going to be the study of knowledge, right? what it means to say something is knowledge, well, that's going to be more like meta-epistemology, the nomenclature within that.
Oh my God, bro, please. I'm bored. All right, peace out, bro. Have a good day.
Okay. Yeah, do you think you have good reason to believe in a God existing?
I would say so, considering, a lot of people are Christians, and, Christianity has stand the test over the last 2,000 years, so...
Okay, so what's the good reason to believe that a God exists?
Well, there's tons of reasons, but if I were to give one, I would say the preconditions of intelligibility satisfy the existence of God.
And you believe that that's going to be more likely predicted than in an atheistic paradigm? Why is that? What is going to be the motivations? So what's going to be the motivations that furnish that God has this desire to manifest a world with intelligent creatures rather than him not? Without positing that you don't have some epistemic access to that desire, which is just going to be a just so story.
Okay, well, even the concept of epistemology proves the existence of God. When I said the preconditions of intelligibility, okay, well, because you don't have absolute knowledge within an
Oh yeah, you're just a presuppositionalist. Okay, so this is just going to be an entire.
So you try to defend it.
Well, that's just going to be an entirety of presuppositionalism, which is just going to be motivated reasoning, which I'm not going to be interested in. But if you're going to say that,
okay, so you don't, so you're not interested. Does that mean you don't have any answer? Is that what you mean?
Well, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in motivating reasoning. Right? If my interlocutor is going to be a motivated interlocutor, then that just means that they're going to give some. They're just going to gerrymander their position at any criticism for which you'll always prevail, which I'm not going to be interested in. And it doesn't seem that they're going to properly engage. But like I said, if you hold the view that God is going to be more likely predicted to manifest a world with intelligent creatures, what's the argument for that?
Why would God make intelligent creatures? Is that what you're asking?
No, what's the argument that he would have this desire?
Because if you read, I'm not sure if you've actually read the Bible, but the whole concept
that
of
you're not going to be able to interpret the Bible. Right?
Dude, let me answer the question. Okay. In Genesis, it says what we're made in his image.
I understand.
We are an
I understand.
expression of his desire. Oh my gosh, you want me to answer?
Well, I'm trying to explain. I understand you want to recourse to some biblical scripture, right? But the issue with that is, that's not going to be auxiliary for the hypothesis. And if you want, I could give an argument, and you can see what your disagreements with the argument is, and it's an argument against the possibility of interpreting the Bible. All right?
Okay, you can go with that if you want, but you have to notice that everything you interpret.
Do you want me to convey the argument or not?
Okay. It's all through your senses and reasoning, which you're taking for granted. You can't account for those without the Christian worldview, because that's preconditions of intelligence.
But the Christian God doesn't also. Yeah, but the Christian God doesn't also predict. So that's once again a just so story. But like I said, if you believe, it doesn't predict that that's going to be more likely, and that's why you're presuppositionalist.
When we're talking about it,
then that's just going to mean that it's just going to be on equilibrium whether or not atheism or the theistic hypothesis explains better, right? There's not going to be a symmetry breaker. So I'm going to give you the argument against the possibility of interpretation, and you can tell me what you disagree with in the argument.
Okay.
Okay. So premise one is if God exists independently of a world, then God doesn't possess phenomenological states.
I don't follow your line of reasoning with that. How do you get from the premise?
It's a material implication, right? So I'm asking, do you deny this premise?
That God is independent of the. Well, when you're talking, the thing is, you make
the premise is if God exists independently of a world, then God doesn't possess phenomenological states.
Okay, I don't know what you meant by phenomenological states, but when we're talking about
define that. So what I mean by phenomenological state is going to be a state that furnishes mental content from an environment, right?
Well, you have to be careful when you're making distinguishments and connections between God and the world, because how we Christians understand the world is that it was something that was created apart from himself. He created himself, but he's in it, he's out of it, he's through it, he's unaffected by it. Right?
This is not pertinent, right? I can grant you that. That doesn't even engage with the argument. So the premise, I'll restate it one more time, I'll recapitulate. The premise states, if God exists independently of the world, then God doesn't possess phenomenological states. And a phenomenological state is cast out to be a state of furnished mental content, that which is from an environment. You would agree that God's mental content was not furnished by an environment, right? You would take it that
yes,
that God's knowledge never obtained, right? That we understand like claims about future events to be propositional, and before God created the universe, he had omniscience. Therefore, he has direct access into he's going to be directly acquainted with the facts of claims about states of affairs within the universe, independent of him yet manifesting it, right? So that's just going to be an a priori truth given your commitments, right? So you're just going to agree with the P1, I would assume, unless you believe God didn't have knowledge. He was not omniscient prior to the
no, of course not. The thing is, God has all knowledge of everything, because everything that is decreed is part of his knowledge, and those decrees go back to him.
Now you're you're just being verbose about stuff that's not really engaging with the argument. Right? Like this doesn't. You saying this
because I don't see your argument. I see your argument failing. Because once again, you can bring up all these arguments.
I haven't even presented. But I haven't even.
You're having first of all issue with the foundation of your argument. It falls. Let me ask you a question. Okay, you're making engage with the argument. You're talking about truth. Where do you get truth without God?
Yeah, that's presupposing God, which is yet to be established. Yeah, so presuppositionalism.
There's going to be any further argumentation.
So then give the argument that God is going to be the explanation, right? You're just saying it seems like you don't have. No,
I'm
listen.
saying that.
Okay, well, what I'm saying is that I don't need an explanation, right? I can even posit it's a brute fact. That's not going to be relevant.
Is that true?
Yeah, hold on, I'm not done talking.
Is that absolutely true?
Is what going to be absolutely true? That's a brute fact.
Is it true according to your worldview?
Yeah, so how about we not engage with the dialogue tree of presuppositionalism? If you're not going to make an argument for why God's going to be the necessary precondition, then I don't really care. Right? So what's the argument?
The argument is what I just said, that you can't even further argument.
You never made it an argument. You never.
I did. I said, okay.
What do you think an argument is? You understand?
Hold on. Preconditions.
Hold on. An argument is going to be a set of premises that is going to confer or infer some conclusion or consequent, right? So if I said, I don't know, all men are mortal, Socrates is mortal, therefore Socrates is man, that's going to be an argument using like first order calculus or prop logic, right? So that's going to be an argument. So I'm asking you, what's the set of premises and a conclusion that you're trying to entail? You're going to mute yourself. So give me the argument, right? Because as to what an argument is.
Yes, I was trying to discuss truth, but we cannot agree about discussing truth unless you can tell me what you believe.
Hold on. We weren't talking. Hold on. We're not talking about truth. We're talking about epistemology, right? A theory of truth and a theory of epistemology are different. But listen,
you realize how you understand epistemology, right?
Yeah. So you keep positing this idea that God is going to be the necessary precondition. Yeah. No, that doesn't. That's completely false. But listen. You understand that in order to make the claim God's going to be the necessary precondition, you have to furnish an argument, right? So what's the argument? You have to convey an argument. And if you're not going to give an argument, then we can go back to the argument that you keep obfuscating away from, which is trying to diffuse the possibility of interpreting biblical literature, right? So it's either one or the other, right? Give your argument, or we go back to the argument I was conveying. Which one?
My first argument, my first argument was the preconditions of intelligibility, in which you said, I'm not interested in discussing that, and then you ran away from a different argument.
That's not
You weren't able to answer my question. Where do you get absolute truth without that? Can you please answer that?
Why would that matter, right? Let's say I don't have an answer. What does that matter?
Why does absolute truth matter? What?
No, I'm saying, let's say I don't have... Yeah, I am serious. So I'm going to give you one more opportunity. Either engage with the argument I'm conveying, or you formalize an argument yourself. Which one? You can unmute yourself.
You keep meeting me. I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah, so
this is what I'm going to say. Okay.
What I want you to say. Listen, if you're not going to engage,
I know what you want me to say.
Yeah, so I want you to say either you're going to engage with my argument or you're going to deploy an argument of your own, right?
Okay. So just listen to me for 1 second.
I want an answer first. I want an answer first. Then we can go into whatever extraneous garbage you want to speak about. That's fine. First, convey the argument, or at least give a response as to which argument you're taking. Yeah, because you keep disengaging. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Engage with my argument or deploy an argument.
Okay, yeah, listen. When you want an answer, you're assuming rationality.
Yeah, you're not engaging. Listen, next time, engage with the questions I'm asking. What's up, Trevor? Okay, he's not loading, it seems. Yeah, anyone else who wants to request, you can. Or anyone who knows anyone else who's willing to come up, you can invite them. I guess for the moment, because this guy's not loading in, it doesn't seem like anyone else is requesting. I'll just, I guess, answer questions in the chat for anyone who has. Okay, yeah, you do have a question? Yeah, just anyone who has a question or an argument or something like that, you can present it in the chat and I'll respond. You should debate Q-Top. Q-Top's gonna kick me like pretty fast, and he knows like nothing. Like, I wouldn't bother wasting time. I have tried talking with him, and he banned me from my main account. Actually, no, that was from Instagram. He banned me when I went on his live on Instagram. He banned me. I have him added on, not added, but I can, if I ever wanted to talk with Q-Top on live. Yeah, it is hard to see the text. Why do you believe there's no reason to believe in God? I mean, I've explained that the entirety of the time. Well, first of all, I don't think there's a single explanandum which God explains, right? An explanandum is a thing for which needs explanation, that which God can be a possible explanation. But I don't think God explains anything as far as I know. As well as God is seemingly an uninterpretable, just so story that's ad hoc. It's nothing like easy to critique. And then there's going to be internal contradictions given some set of commitments that person undertakes, which is going to be underpinning of that criticism. So that, I think there's going to be, at least to my knowledge, I have dozens of reasons to disbelieve in God. Anyone else want to request, you can. I would say my knowledge, there's no good reason to stop believing. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, Q-Top's the least educated Christian. Well, I don't know if he's the least educated Christian, but he's asinine. Can I talk and chat, or can I join the live? You can join the live if you're able to, if you have enough people. Are you trying to disprove God? Can't people just have their beliefs? No. There has to be physical evidence for me to believe in any God. That doesn't make sense. If we take it that God is a non-physical entity, right, there's not going to be empirical observations that's going to be cooperating with the hypothesis. So that's just going to be a category error. Someone came up.
Hello.
Hey.
Hold on, I'm gonna leave and come back because my camera is like really weird.
That's fine. There's too much text flooding in that I'm like backed up reading the text. I mean the chat, whatever. My internet's slow, can't hear what you're saying. Is it like that for anyone else? Can you guys hear me? It always makes me laugh when clueless people try using big words to pretend they're smart. I mean, you can come up and we can gladly conversate, and I can dissect every word I ever convey to you if that's so necessary, right? I'm not pretending. I'm well educated on philosophy, and I have been debating for a while. I have a YouTube channel that archives my debates, and I've debated other like philosophical subjects like meta-ethics, applied ethics. I've debated veganism or against veganism. I've debated metaphysics. I've debated substance monism and substance ontology. Well, I mean, that's just going to be an ontological position. I denied that. I debated a lot of philosophical positions. I don't know what you're talking about, pretending to be smart if I actually am schooling myself. Right? I literally am educated on the subject. Against veganism, yeah, I don't think those were recorded. But I have argued against, well, you're not even going to know who they are. They're just Discord people. I just subbed. How do I discuss with you? What do you mean? You subbed to my YouTube? I guess whenever I post another video, then I guess you can comment on that video. I mean, my Discord's in the comments, like in the bio of a video. So if you want to search around for that, you can add me and I'll add you back, and then we can talk there if you want. Anyone have any questions? Oh, also, I just realized, I didn't even bring it up, that someone sent me, like the heart. Thanks. Sorry, I was too busy rambling. I didn't see that. People can have their beliefs. Sure, they can have their beliefs. That doesn't mean it's sufficient to commit to, right? I'm just saying that there's not going to be any attestable motivation for one to assent to this idea that a God exists. I don't think there's going to be any warrant that is going to be sufficient to believe in God. And that's all I'm doing in this live, presenting how I can critique these people's positions and how it's overtly the case that there's motivations to believe a God doesn't exist. But they can continue to disbelieve that a God doesn't exist. That's fine. I don't really care. They're just irrational. I'm not telling people they can't believe. Yeah, what's up?
Hey.
What should I call you? I'm just call you 55. What's up, 50 or 55, whatever.
I hold the keys to work.
What's up?
I hold the keys to work. You have to give me just a 55.
Well, do you have any good reason to believe God exists?
Yeah. Look
Sure,
at creation itself.
And you believe that's going to be, so you understand evidence is going to be that which is predicted under some explanation, right? A hypothesis. That's how evidence is just going to be. Yeah, so evidence is going to be the symmetry breaker for a hypothesis.
The evidence is that none of us as human beings can recreate without the matter existing itself.
That's not, I think you're confused about, you're just like,
in other words, can you create an atom?
What does that have to do with anything, right?
I'm not asking you, can you create an atom?
Maybe.
You know you can't.
Are you asking me personally?
I'm asking you, can you create an atom? You know,
I don't think I have.
Created an atom.
Well, I don't know anyone who has.
That doesn't enough reason to believe in God because we can't create an atom.
What? Well, first of all, that's not going to establish that it's going to be impossible. Just
I mean, if you don't want to believe it, you don't have to believe it, man.
Okay, you're just like spinning nonsense. You're not even critically thinking, not even 1%. It's just like these old people come on and they just spit their gibberish where they just want to try and preach to you and not understand the criticisms you're conveying that just completely undermine their position. And they continue to like act like they're some preacher on this live. Like either give an argument or engage with my criticisms. Like you weren't even listening to what I'm saying. Anyone else? Any questions, comments, arguments in the chat? I can answer. The universe couldn't have possibly created itself. Okay. Is that supposed to be reason to believe in God? How do you think you're alive? I don't even know what that asks. What are you asking? Do you believe religion and spirituality is the same? Christianity uses the argument too. No, religion and spirituality have nothing to do. I mean, not nothing. They're obviously in correlation, right? I would take it that religion is going to be dependent on spirituality. You can be a spiritual atheist. Of course, I would just take that view to be asinine still. People don't understand science. Okay. Well, I don't understand science. I don't care about science. I don't think science is going to be giving any more motivations to believe God exists. Don't want to need a God. God is real because he's the one that created you. What? Yeah. I'm not interested in you just throwing around. Like, these people don't, like, I'm convinced these people really don't think. You there?
Hey, what's up? Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay?
What's up? Yeah, you can hear? Okay. Yeah, I can hear you well.
I'm getting an echo for some reason. I think it's okay now. Okay. Hey, by the way, we couldn't see or hear that guy. Just FYI, he was not appearing in the box, and I couldn't hear anything, and apparently nobody else could either.
Oh, really? I didn't notice.
No worries. But I wanted to follow up on one thing he mentioned and just get your thoughts on this, because I discussed this exact subjective versus objective distinction like a few days ago. Mm-hmm. And the idea that was being presented is, yes, so like in the general sense, God would be a subject, right, regarding the position of having agency and being a subject that directs expression through that agency, correct?
You're lagging a bit, but yeah.
Sorry, yeah. Let me know if it gets too bad, and and I'll just hop off. But the idea was that if we generally, when we separate subjective versus objective, the basis for that is that we're talking about our subjectivity or just the idea of not being able to establish subjective states as being stance independent. We don't know if there's a stance independent beyond the subjective position that we're perceiving through or advocating through. But with God, right, like even though you have the general definition met, the idea there is that like all of existence springs from that subject, right? So objectivity would be defined a posteriori after that initial definition of subjectivity. So it would be a different kind of subjectivity that would be discussed there, as opposed to the general distinction that we make between stance dependent and stance independent positions. Does that,
I don't understand why that is.
Well, because when we discuss our subjectivity, right, we're not claiming that we are, unless we're solipsists, we're not claiming that we are the source of existence or that everything that exists springs from us. But with God, right, like the basic premise is that like existence springs from God. There is no objective outside of God.
Yeah, but listen, I can grant it's going to be the case that God is going to be the necessary precondition that manifests the ontology of the universe and the entities and elements within that system. But that's not going to somehow entail that moral facts are then true in virtue of him uttering it as he's the entity who manifested the universe. That's not going to follow, right? So that's not going to be like, that's just like the definition of a non sequitur. It could be the case that God, like, it's going to be logically possible that a God desires to lie about moral facts and create a universe, right? There's no contradiction entailed. That's going to be a logical possibility. So first of all, we're still going to apply logic the same way. We're not going to gerrymander it for the benefit of a God. That's just going to be like, that's just party priest, right? We're not going to do, what's it called? How did I forget what it was called? Whatever. So it's not going to be the case that in virtue of the fact he made it, that it's now the case that his utterances are true, right? Depending on whatever theory of truth is going to be underpinning some proposition, say the corresponding theory of truth, and that means in order for his utterances to be true, that they must correspond with reality in virtue of what's going to be the instrument in which we use to verify that it corresponds with reality, right? It's still going to be a claim. All a claim is going to be some string of symbols, right? Like a proposition, anything that has truth value, a truth apt claim. So me saying I have a dog, and I can be the creator of the universe, and I say I have that a unicorn also exists isn't necessarily true in virtue of the fact that made the universe, right? I can randomly right now just like say I was endowed with omniscience, omnibenevolent, or not omnibenevolence, but omniscience and omnipotence. I can say that there's a unicorn, a metaphysical unicorn or an immaterial unicorn that exists. That's not going to be true in virtue of the fact that made the universe, right? So it's not going to be predicted that God who made the universe is either going to say facts, or he's not going to be like lying about moral facts, nor that he's going to even have, like, I don't even take it that moral facts exist. So I'm not clear what would make something a moral fact, right? It's
I'm not denying that. Like, I accept the potentiality, I guess, in the abstract that God could lie. We can kind of like apply a sort of Descartes' demon to God, right? Scenario. My point was more in the abstract that the condition of making something objective is not precluded by the fact that God is defined as subjective. Is the point that I was making, and the reason for that again is because we define God as a different, not myself, but I'm just playing devil's advocate for the people that do define God, right? We define God as a different sort of subjective, a sort that all of existence springs from. I'm not saying that this entity or whatever you want to name it is prevented from stating, let's say, for example, hear ye all, there is a unicorn that exists on top of Mount Everest, right? Like, just by virtue of this entity stating it, I mean, it could be lying. There's no debate there. I agree with you wholeheartedly. But the point is that if this entity wanted to make this a true objective fact, they wouldn't be precluded from doing that just by virtue of us labeling them or understanding them in the abstract subjective sense. Does that make sense, or what I'm saying?
I'm not really following now.
Oh, okay. Let me try to, I guess, use this analogy. Have you ever played, I forgot what it was like a, it's like black and white, actually. Like if you're a game where you kind of like play God and you can be like good or evil, you can kind of like set the rules of existence or whatever for the in-game universe. Do you recall? Like, I think it was called black and white, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I'm not aware of this game.
Okay, well, that's essentially the premise. So my point is that you take role of the entity that decides what exists in this world.
You're lagging
Okay.
No, you're lagging a lot.
I'll try to hop back on.
Yeah, that's like.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for having me. I'll try to come back on.
Right now you're not.
Oh, is it back?
I mean, unless it happens again, yeah. So it's fine, yeah, I know.
Okay, yeah, just let me know what happens again. I'll just hop off and come back later. But essentially, that would be the analogy that would provide so, in this game, you be this entity that determines what is true, what is not true, what is good, what is bad, and that is the fact of the world. Now, again, I'm not denying that you can lie and tell the residents or the denizens of this existence, like, hey, it's wrong if you drive your car on Sundays. But then in your mind, just kind of still know that you're lying and that it's not really wrong, that you're not going to take, or there's not going to be any consequences to that. But I'm saying is, if you wanted to make that an objective fact in their existence, that this is a moral fact about their existence, that driving your car on a Sunday is wrong, you being the arbiter of this existence, you would not be precluded by anything to do that or to make that an objective reality in their world.
Well, first of all, I don't use the term reality in this way. Right? Usually when I talk about reality, I'm implying something metaphysical, which is something that is not strongly concerning given we don't have. I wouldn't take away access to metaphysics. But I think you're making some claim like, if it's the case God can establish ontology, that therefore it's the case that God can manifest an ontological moral fact. But that doesn't, what you did say was God is going to be the arbiter of truth, which that that seems evidently not the case, right? It's not like God's going to determine the truth of himself having omnipotence, right? He doesn't establish the truth to his aptitude to actuate any logically possible state of affairs, right? It's true, independent of him. So
that would, sorry, just on that point, that would presume, I would agree with you there if you presume that logic is paramount to God. I would agree with you if you have that. Meaning that God is subject to logical truths and cannot violate them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, presumably anyone who says God exists, I take it that they're making an existential claim that is true, right? It is the case. It is true that God exists, right? If you're not appealing to this logic Diophians or the logic that is being taught, I guess you would sense logic that's used. If you're not appealing to the logic that's used, right? You're just going to either appeal to some like you're just going to say God's illogical or something weird like that, then it doesn't make sense to say God is true, right? That is true that God exists, right? It's going to be non-propositional, even consideration of like the laws of
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. The way I would reconcile that is that we're making this claim within a logical doxastic domain. So for us, we're bound by the laws of logic, laws of physics.
Logical doxastic domain. Yeah.
What I meant is our doxastic domain operates through a logical structure, usually classical logic. We have atheism and like paired consistent logics, but nevertheless, it comes down to a logical system as far as like
that's not true. So listen, when you say that there's going to be like some dependency upon the doxastic domain, which would just translate to there being a system of beliefs. Right? I can hold to a belief that is going to be metalogical, that is going to not comport or be conducive to some system of logic. Let's just take the standard model of classical logic, which is not going to be the case. Then my beliefs must adhere to that logic system, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be the case. My beliefs conform to any known system of logic, at least, right? So it can be the case that I have a belief that's logic independent, right? That's something that isn't conducive to any system of actions of logic.
Yeah, I would say that the belief, the merits of the belief might not comport with the system of logic, but as far as like what it is set in, as far as our ability to rationalize and express it, and
I think it's using terms weirdly right now. I take it merit just means internal value.
Sure, that's exactly what I'm saying. So, yeah, like a unicorn, for example, might not necessarily be logically coherent, but the fact that it's being expressed within a logical system, within a doxastic system that follows some set of logical principles, whether you assume classical or not, then that's what I'm referencing. I don't disagree with you that it's not that its merits would comport with that, but these are two different levels of reference as far as the logical structure in which that belief exists. Does that make sense?
I mean, I'm not clear on how this is even coming back to the initial statement of whether or not God is going to be seen as a distinct axiological subject.
Yeah, let me tie it back. The reason I brought this up is because we discussed the idea of God.
How does this relate to there being subjective morality? There being objective morality, rather.
Well, that was my initial point, right? When you're talking to the other guy, and you were saying that the fact that God is a subject to me is. Am I again?
No, you're good.
I was on my own. The fact that God is a subject precludes the idea that emanations or edicts, whatever you want to call them, from God are objective. And my point is essentially just to differentiate between that definition of subject versus subjectivity versus our stance independent understanding of objective versus subjective, meaning that we cannot establish ourselves as our subjective perceptions and rationality as stance independent because we're processing everything through our subject, our mental faculties. But if we're positing this being or entity from where everything emanates, all of existence emanates, then it would be a subject, but all objective truth would be secondary to that subject. So it would be different.
That wouldn't follow. So listen, there's so many objective facts that are just going to be like things like that are maybe with a manifestation that God decides to deliberate on, right? To say it's a very like him uttering a proposition and him manifesting some state of affairs is completely different. So right, God can say that there's an island in X location, and God can actually manifest an island for which we can discover. They're completely two different things. We're not saying virtue of the fact God they made an island. That's I'm not clear how this changes any. It just seems like
I agree with you on that because that goes back to the Descartes theme and
it's something that God is no matter what his views on morality are subjective, right? It's not a change of fact. And now we have just an objective fact, right? These are objective moral facts. That's not a problem.
Yeah, it only makes sense. That position only makes sense to me if you presume again that the laws of logic or some logical frame is paramount to God. And if you're doing that, then I have no qualms.
And you mean like paramount? You just mean like inferior or something?
Well, meaning that God is bound by the structure. But correct.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense to say that anything is going to be existent. Like obviously that can be the case, right? Because these systems and frameworks, such as ontological frameworks, epistemic frameworks, logical frameworks, are going to just be guiding a conceptual scheme. And if you say that God superimposes in one of these frameworks, then that just means God is not going to be compatible with the conceptual scheme, which just means he's not going to be compatible with conceivability, which would actually in fact be motivating for the view God doesn't exist, right?
Yeah, I get that objection, and the way I would respond would be similar to the regarding the merits of a belief versus the doxastic domain in which it is set. So if you consider, for example, this concept of I don't know, existential phenomena beyond logic, let's just say that that concept it just means exactly as it sounds, existential phenomena beyond logic, meaning phenomena not subject to logical frame.
It's going to be a fact that is not going to follow in the modal category of logic. It's just not going to seem to me that it's going to be coherent, right? Under any scope. Like, I think that is like, so a non-logical scope is going to be understood with its own set of for which a broad scope, like a logical scope, will allow for the coherency of, right? But I take it that nothing, because I understand when you say that there's going to be a metaphysical scope, because I take the metaphysics epistemically indeterministic, and that we just jury under metaphysical principles to have some metaphysical scopes. I don't even take large consideration into one who says that the modal category or the modal scope system category is going to be metaphysical. So once one makes the claim that this proposition is going to be, or there's going to be fact independent of logic, then that's just going to mean to me that it's just dumb, right? I would think that to be anything more than stupidity, raw stupidity. It's not going to be coherent under any modal scope. So what does it mean to say that?
My response would be that the concept itself is coherent, but not any discussion of its substance or merits, because that would be incoherent, right? If you're already positing something that's existentially beyond logic and you're trying to discuss it, I agree with you wholeheartedly, that's just nonsense. But the concept itself of existential phenomena beyond logic would only be itself incoherent if logic is established a priori as absolute. And that goes back to the original contention where I don't necessarily...
It doesn't have to be established a priori.
It doesn't have to be established a priori, but if you can't present it as absolute, then...
And it doesn't have to be absolute, right? So it's like a theory, right? These theories for these, I guess, philosophical categories, like I guess, they're going to be cash outs, right? They're not going to be like, there's some way we can metaphysically infer that there's going to be some superposing epistemic framework, right? It's just going to be like, what I consider to be a system of knowledge, where I take knowledge from you, and that's just what we're going to work under, right? If you're just going to say that, listen, if I said something is going to be coherently impossible under a non-logical scope, that makes sense. If I say it's going to be coherently impossible in a logical scope, that makes sense. If I say it's going to be coherently impossible independent of a logical system, it's just not going to be coherent that anyone's conveying anything. It's like me just putting a string of nonsense together. Yeah,
I know. I get what you're saying, but that's the distinction I'm trying to make between discussing any kind of substance or merit of this concept versus the concept itself. Because we're in a doxastic domain that's defined by some parameters, some system of logic. Excuse me. Whether you're using, generally standard logic, but like I said, it's very consistent logic, but they are systems nevertheless. The point I'm making is this idea, right, that we are bound by this doxastic system. We don't necessarily know if there's anything beyond the system. We can't claim it. We can only operate within the system. But this concept here that technically
partake in my doxastic provision, and then we can change our doxastic system.
Sure, but regardless of what system you elect or change or modify it to, you're still going to have this issue of where this concept presents itself. Like whatever the system is relative to that system, you're going to have this idea of existential phenomena that's beyond the system. We can't discuss the coherency as far as like the merits, but the concept itself is perfectly rational as far as like the idea of beyond the system. That in itself originates from the doxastic model. Like that's not external to it. That concept is within the doxastic model.
Which concept? Logic?
No, the concept of beyond the doxastic model. That concept itself is not external to the.
But the issue is that what I need to say that is it's not going to be a thing. It's just that it's going to be like there's not going to be any conceptual substance behind the utterance, right? I can just say and then there's not going to be that's not going to be coherent, right? And it's not going to be clear without some semantic content what I'm actually expressing. And seemingly when you're putting things that aren't going to be compatible or not even categorized for which it seems compatible with a conceptual scheme, it just seems to me that you're spewing nothing substantive at all.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I brought it up, the concept itself, I would argue, is not nothing. I think the concept is coherent. And the reason I brought it up is because we were talking about whether God is subject to logical strictures or can violate them or is paramount to them. And this concept alone, I think, prevents a categorical position of saying that God is necessarily subject to these strictures. That's the only reason I brought it up.
That would be conceptual for me, right? If one is to say that God does not abide by a logical system, that's what I desire to draw out. Like, if I'm coming to classical logic, seemingly given that system, contradictions cannot exist, and you say that God does not abide by the truth values of either truth or falsity, then that's just going to be a win for my conceptual scheme. Right? I'm not going to be in contention. But that's why I still to inference of what.
But how somebody still posits this? Again, I'm making an argument for this. I'm just saying that like, this is a belief system, and if you're presuming from the start that like only things that are within the doxastic, defined within the doxastic domain, exist and can be considered, right? And somebody is again arguing on this basis of.
No, it's not about the doxastic system because it doesn't deal. Obviously, it's not going to be the case for instance. Yeah, I can have that antithetical doxa, right? Like if I say, I hold the belief my share is completely red, and there's going to be an antithetical belief that my share is not completely red. Now, it's possible that I undertake both doxas and I hold that a true contradiction exists, similar to some family under pure consistent logic. But if I say something like, I believe that the statement true contradictions exist is neither true or false, right? Not just like, let's say I regress with some like that's not going to be coherent. That the true value of the existence of a contradiction is the contradiction. If I say true contradictions exist, that means I'm giving the quality of truth to the state of contradiction. Or if I say the state of falsity. Now, it's not going to be clear when one says when they say, I believe the true value of the existence of contradiction is a contradiction. Right? That's not going to be, there's not going to be a conceptual, be substantive under any consideration. But even under paradigmatic logic, no one who subscribes to that framework would say something like that makes sense.
Well, I'm not understanding exactly what you mean by accepting truth value of contradictions, because paradigmatic logic, I mean, I bank on learning more contradictions.
But that's the thing. Everything exists. Yeah, so if I ask them, is it possible contradictions exist? Is a contradiction? That's not going to be clear. It's not convincing. You're just convinced the truth value that under classical logic for the existence. Right? If the belief of a contradiction exists just by atheism, and someone under classical logic would hold the antithetical view, right? It's false that true contradictions exist. But one is not going to be committed to the idea that the truth value of a contradiction is in itself both true and false. That's not going to be something that's going to be coherent.
Right, but the contradiction itself, right, is something that's accepted as part of the logical frame, depending on what the pair consistency is, and that's I guess something you can analogize maybe in this regard on our logical frame being defined by a certain system of logic, but because it's not something we can hold as absolute or categorically stands independent, we have this. Yeah, go ahead.
So, for two reasons. So far, I don't think we've made that much progression, as well as the fact that this is obviously going to be far too confusing for the audience. I don't even here probably understands both of us or capture what we're saying. So, if you want, I'm going to move to the next guest. You can add me, and if you want, we can continue the conversation probably tomorrow on Discord.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. I'm having a debate if you want to tune in. I'm not going to know. I'm having a debate with him on Mr. Coco 3's live on Friday, December 1st. So it's going to be good talk. The proposition is the belief in God, believing in the existence of God is rational. So I'll be doing the affirmative, you'll be doing the opposition.
Okay, sure.
I appreciate you having me on, Monkey. Good chatting.
Yeah, have a good one. All right, so I'm going to add, because these two have been waiting for a while, I'm going to add two people at once. If it's too reckless, I'll probably down.
How you doing?
Hey, what's up?
So first of all, I just wanted to clarify, because you seem like a pretty cool person, and you seem like you're arguing in good faith, which is something that you can't really find with a lot of people. I am actually a rabbi, so I have a pretty good understanding of the Torah and stuff like that, and I figure this could be a good actual opportunity for some conversation. First, I figured I kind of want to ask what your definition of God is. Are you talking about the Abrahamic God, the Christian idea of God, just God as a concept, or like...
So for me, it's not necessarily going to have a definition that constitutes the categorization of God. I take it that what I mean by God is going to be some overarching subsumption of specific models. Either going to be the case that you can give me a descriptive quality.
Yeah, I get if you can prove the existence of God, but I'm trying to understand what your concept of God is. Is it the egregore that people have created?
If someone said, listen, I'm not taking any specific model of God, right? Like, obviously the ideas of the Christian Muslim God are going to be distinct. And it's going to be the case that a Christian doesn't consider the Islamic, like...
God, I have to know whose existence I'm proving, right?
Well, then that's what I'm trying to explain, right? I take it that the term God is just going to be a vacuous term, and that's just going to be an overarching specific models or conceptions of description, right? So one can be a pantheist and say what they mean by God is the universe, and I'm not going to have any for going to be considered a God, but that's not going to.
What if I told you that I can prove to you that the Abrahamic God, let's just say, exists? Because I'm a rabbi, I only have like so much clarification, but I do have a pretty good understanding of my God.
Okay. Well, listen, you take it that the God explains the existence of the universe, right?
I take it as a certain people's understanding of the universe, sure. I don't think that it is overarching or that Moses was, say, divine, but I do think that he had advice. That when
what I'm asking is, when
we were running around stabbing each other with sticks, it was an improvement. And the word God is actually not something that appears in the Torah. It's something that's a Greek, like Latinization Christian creation. If you want to refer to...
What I'm trying to ask you is, you would take it that God manifested the universe, right? He explains the existence of the universe.
We get to that eventually, sure. You can say, if you attack that point, if you have some sort of like counter debate right off the bat, we can go with that. But
listen, I'm just trying to get clear. Do you have any arguments for why God exists?
I was trying to get into that. Is that I thought that you were arguing in good faith. Is everything okay here, or?
Yeah, I'm just wondering what's the argument.
That there is good reason to believe in God, and that I can prove he exists. Can I have some sort of proof that you have that $250 that you're holding over people's head? Because I have a feeling I'm going to walk away with it.
Yeah, so what I'm asking is to deploy an inference that's going to drive the conclusion that a God exists.
You don't got to use big fancy words, bro. You heard my question.
All right, great. Then you can leave if you're not going to engage. What's up? What's up, Matt?
Hey, man. I just kind of want to say, I don't really understand your talking point. Are you saying that God is a concept, like doesn't exist?
Well, I'm not convinced that a God exists now.
Okay, so I kind of want to touch on the scientific rationale that you were talking about earlier. What is your explanation for the universe having inherent laws? Like, not even talking about the Abrahamic God, which I just like.
Well, first, I never brought up science to begin with.
Yeah.
But I don't know what you're asking.
Okay, so this is just a fact that every scientist believes in. The universe has inherent laws that we can't explain. We just know that they exist. Particles have a certain charge. Mass affects the space-time continuum.
No, that's false.
Sorry?
Scientists aren't committed to the idea that there's inherent or essential laws of the universe, right? Laws are going to be an inductive case given a range of phenomena we observe, right? It can be, it's logically possible that at one point in time, like let's say tomorrow, gravity just stops working, right? It's not static, or we can't assent to the idea or ascertain the proposition that gravity is not to ever fail, right? Laws are just going to be given atom. It seems that gravity holds, so we posit that there's not any instance as to our observations that it does not exist. It's not a fact that it's going to be in the universe, right? We only know, I believe the scientific consensus is we have like 4% of the knowledge of the like observable universe we have access to, which even then we don't even exhaust that. 4% plus the universe is infinitely expansive. So we don't even know if in other parts of the universe like gravity doesn't exist. We don't even have any epistemic access to the observation of anything outside that 4%. I mean, so it could be the case that when we're turning our back, science is turning their back to one planet, that during that back turn that the planet just stops like abiding by those laws, right? So the laws are not static, and they're laws, right? They're not principles. A law and a principle are different.
So I would disagree with you there. For one, yeah, as you said, like we can change scientific.
Wait, what exactly are you disagreeing with?
I'm disagreeing with the point that gravity and other things just stop working after we observe it. What do you mean?
Yeah, in order to say that it's not possible that gravity stops working, that's not logically possible. You'd have to derive a contradiction.
I mean, what is your basis that gravity cuts off? Because we have sent.
No, listen. I'm not positing it is the case. I'm not positing it is the case that at points gravity cuts off. I'm saying it's logically possible, right? And we don't have access to whether or not it's not the case.
It could be like a magic elephant god on the other side of the universe that we just wouldn't know about. So that's not really it's not really an argument right there. Yeah, anything's possible. I
wasn't giving an argument. I wouldn't know if that magical god elephant is even going to be logically coherent.
Yeah.
So it can be the case that there's a magic god elephant. I'm fine with granting that. I'm not going to reject that.
So
right? Like
why?
Listen, if I say it's false,
you got it, man. Go ahead.
Listen, if I say it's false that a magical god elephant exists in some part of the universe that we cannot access, that's going to be a proposition. Now, if I say that proposition is false, now I would need to give evidence for that negative existential claim, that it's not the case that a magic god elephant exists in the part of the universe that we can't observe, right? That's going to be a proposition I would have to demonstrate. But if I say it's possible it's the case, that means I'm not making an adjudication, right? I'm saying it seems that they're going to be symmetric, right? There's no symmetry breaker that determines that one is more likely than the other, right? Obviously, the absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. So it's going to be the case that given that we don't have access to those parts of the universe, and if we take it that this entity that you described, this magic god elephant, it can be the case that it does exist. But to say that it either does exist or doesn't exist, which is different from saying it's logically possible, committed or subscribing to a specific ontological position that individual must undertake some inference for. And if it's not the case they can provide an inference to demonstrate the existence or the non-existence, then that just means they have no reason to make adjudication. Now, I'm saying it's logically possible if we take that entity to be logically possible. So I'm just saying, yeah, it can be the case. I'm not going to claim it's not the case that this elephant exists, nor that it is the case it exists, because we don't have access to that truth.
Okay. I guess I can see what you're coming from, but at the same time, and back to like inherent laws of the universe, right? Science agree that we can probably discover why later on, like electrical charge, gravitational influence of the space-time continuum.
You said it's the case.
Those are the things people agree on. Like we've observed those things even far in deep space with gravitational lensing of distant bodies. So
well, yeah, that's my point. That's going to be within the observable universe.
We have those laws. We have those laws that like pretty much everybody agrees on. If you're not a flat earther, we know that bodies far away disrupt the space-time continuum. What would cause those laws to be into place in a chaotic universe?
I don't know what you're asking.
Okay. My basis of God, not even arguing Abrahamic, just God as a concept. The reason I could say he exists is because in a perceived chaotic universe, there are inherent laws that everything has to abide by, that it cannot break.
Well, once again, when you mean inherent, that's just going to be essential, which is going to mean that it can't fail to exist without this constitutive, right? It's going to be a facet of its essence, which is not going to be the case because it's inductive, which just means it's going to be a synthetic fact. Essence is going to be constituted in a priori things like analytics, like me saying, it's impossible that an unmarried man is not a bachelor, right? It can't not be the case given that the analytics of the term, right? The definition of a bachelor is an unmarried man. You can't be a bachelor and yet a married man, right? But it's going to be a synthetic fact that this, bachelor has blonde hair. Right? It doesn't have to be the case. It's not a part of the essence of what makes something a bachelor that bachelor has blonde hair. So that's not going to be a part of what is inherent to a bachelor.
I would like the universe that though, because if we're going to blonde hair analogy, right? Just like it is inherent truth that the guy would have blonde hair. There's an inherent truth.
That's not inherent truth.
Why would that not be? If he has blonde hair, why is that not inherent?
Yeah, so what it means to say for something is inherent, like I just explained, is that inherent just means a part of the essence of that entity, right? If it's inherent to that entity, it's essential to that entity. And if it's essential, that means it can't fail to be the case that entity does not have that quality. So it's possible that that bachelor dyes their hair green, right? That's going to be a logical possibility. It's a synthetic fact that they have blonde hair. It's not going to be an a priori fact. Yeah, so it's not going to be a part of the essence that that individual who is a bachelor has blonde hair. And what I was talking about is not the individual themselves, the term bachelor. If we take an entity to be bachelor and that entity has blonde hair, it's not going to be inherent to the term bachelor that it, adheres that entities are with blonde hair, right? It could be the case that a bachelor is bald, right? All it means to say something is a bachelor is that they're an unmarried man, nothing more. So that's what constitutes.
With that same, the difference between, because he could dye his hair, right? But you can't.
Yeah, so that's a synthetic fact.
You can't change. Okay, I guess a synthetic fact of the universe would be that a particle has inherent charge that it has upon its, comeuppance in the universe. It can't change unless we act.
All facts of the universe are synthetic. The only things we can take to be non-synthetic about the universe is that it encompasses space and time. Those are the only two a priori cases that we can derive for the universe. Anything else, like laws in the universe, are synthetic. So gravity can stop working.
How would that be possible if we've observed it in every single case? We know how gravity works. It's called a theory because it can change, but we've observed it and we can test these things.
The reason it's called a theory is because we observe some phenomena, and that phenomena is that bodies are getting pulled together. And then we have some hypothesis, these two celestial bodies are getting pulled to each other.
Yes, but it's also testable. And we can test it, we can prove these things.
Yeah. So what it means to say that something is different from a hypothesis to a theory is that there's going to be a certain set of predictions that are going to be made that corroborates with a hypothesis to fortify it. And if it's the case we make those predictions and those predictions come true, that's going to be evidence in light of that hypothesis, for which if that prediction is to come true, that's going to motivate that hypothesis is stronger than other competing hypotheses that makes it a theory. That there's going to be some set of predictions that are going to be corroborative with it, right? Like I can say there's a hypothesis that every day I lose a shoe, it's a shoe stealing fairy that takes that shoe.
Yeah.
But there's not going to be a specific set of predictions we can undertake for which that it's going to be more evidence that it's a shoe stealing fairy than my little brother who's pulling a prank on me.
I mean, you could test those things. You could use external factors to test those things.
But we wouldn't know what is to be predicted from the fairy hypothesis, right? We can predict. We're going to have more predictions under the hypothesis it's my little brother pulling a prank on me than there is going to be for the fairy hypothesis, right? It's not clear what we would predict from the fairy hypothesis. And given that there's going to be more evidence motivating the hypothesis it's my little brother, that's going to be the superposing theory, right? There's going to be more motivation for that than any other hypothesis, a general hypothesis.
Yeah, but that's just a theory. That's just a hypothesis. We have theories that are testable and we can prove. We just keep calling it a theory because there can be some change to the model in the future if we find more evidence. But the current evidence that we have is that mass affects the space-time continuum, and we can measure the amount of stress it has on it. We can measure how much it bends it by. We can measure acceleration into bodies, and we can measure all these things. The reason it's only considered a theory is because it can change the future. Science never wants to keep something as a straight fact because we could find something that changes in the future. But there are
we do have facts. We just consider phenomena to be facts. If you're talking about an established fact, it's not going to be the case we can ever come to a fact, given we can't exhaust all aspects of the universe or even the observable universe, right? In order to make
there's still aspects we have yet to discover, so that's why we're still calling it a theory.
No, but what it means to say that we can exhaust is that meaning in every logically possible state of affairs, it fails to be the case that P does not obtain, right? So let's say every Planck second or Planck time of the universe, in every single Planck measure of the universe, it's the case, gravity is the case throughout all of time. That's going to establish the fact that that specific theory of gravity is a fact, right? But it's impossible we do that, right? We're not going to be able to measure every point of space, every point of time for infinitum and determine that this specific theory is going to be a fact. So that's what it means to say something is a fact. It uses induction, right? It's not going to be the case we deduce without appealing to induction. It is the case that, this theory of gravity is true. So those are all synthetic facts. Like I said, the only a priori facts or analytical facts that are going to be determined of the universe are just going to be the fact that it encompasses space and time. So it's not going to be necessarily the case that the laws remain, right? The laws are, 700 years from now, either it's going to be the case that our current theory of gravity is revised, or it's the case we found out about new phenomena or new data, information about the phenomena of gravity that is not going to correspond with the previous hypothesis. So we let go of that hypothesis and have a new theory, or that theory and have a new theory, right? So it could be the case 700 years from now, what we believe to be gravity currently is completely different. So that's going to be, this is what's called Hempel's dilemma. For ones who undertake the view of physicalism, physicalism is to undertake the current physical facts, but the physical facts or scientific facts are not static.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be the case that the law of gravity is going to be like anything more than it's not going to be a priori. That's not going to matter to the idea that a God exists. I don't see how that's going to be pertinent.
I would say it's pertinent because, and yeah, you're right. In some far trillion light years away outside of the observable universe, the gravity could fail, right? But as we
fail right here, right now.
Yeah,
that's going to still be logical.
Right now, and as we observe in the past few hundred years, everywhere in the observable universe that we pointed a telescope at, gravity is acting the same. And just like we can predict how planets move in a system, billions of light.
I can agree with that, but I don't understand how. Because it's not going to be inherent or essential to the universe.
So, okay,
right? So it can be the case.
This doesn't just apply to gravity in general, but do you agree that there are laws to the universe, like just in general?
Of course,
Okay,
gravity's a
so
law.
what would be the arbiter of those laws if there wasn't some kind of higher power manipulating it, right? If gravity,
An arbiter is going to be one who makes the judgment for some proposition, who determines the. Yeah. So I don't know what you mean. Who's going to determine?
Okay.
We're going to determine. We're going to be the arbiters to whether or not gravity exists, right? We can determine that, and we can make judgment upon that given our phenomenological states, right? We can access empirical data that proves that gravity exists. So I don't know what you mean. What arbiter? Are you asking what manifests these laws?
I guess that's what I mean. What manifested the laws within our universe, right? Because in a chaotic universe, there's no need for laws. There's no need for all particles to act the same. But there are things that things without a consciousness must do.
Well, so there's going to be two issues. We only know that physical elements are going to be causally linked, right? That things, what is called an explanandum, which is a thing to be explained, and an explanon, which is the explanation for an explanandum. We only can apply explanations for things that are explanandums. And we only know that physical elements, once again, inductively have explanations. It's going to be logically possible that there is a physical fact that doesn't have an explanation. And this is known in philosophy as a brute fact. So inductively, we believe that everything has an explanation. But first of all, physical laws are not physical elements. So that's it's not going to even seem inductively appropriate to apply the possibility necessarily or the probability of there being an explanon for gravity. And second of all, it's going to be the case that it can be a brute fact, right? It just can be unexplained entirely. And it's not going to seem any more likely that you have motivations for why it is something. Like, do you have an argument that motivates the idea that it is going to have some necessary explanation? Or is it going to be the case that you presume that there must be an explanation and a God can explain it? Because if it's just the case that you're going to presume that, I'm not going to grant the presupposition, and it's just not going to seemingly going to be the case that God explains anything if there's not necessarily an explanation for which a God could be the hypothesis for that.
Yeah, but do you have inherent explanation as to why, like what these particles have? Like, we just can't explain.
No, a particle is a physical fact, a physical element, like I said. I said laws are not physical elements, so it's not going to be necessarily
they belong to the physical object. They cannot break these laws.
No, they apply to the physical system, but gravity's not a physical element.
I don't get what you're saying.
Yeah, so a tennis ball is going to be a tangible physical element. Gravity is not going to be an element. Right? So gravity's not composed of particles.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a force. So we only know that physical elements possess causal dependencies or have explanations inductively. But like I said, once again, with this induction, it can be the case still logically that the rest of the universe that we don't have access to observations of are also unexplained. That there's not explanational connection or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's going to be logically possible, that nothing else in the universe is explained. Only the aspects of the universe that we have access to can we see that things are explained by other things. It could be like the rest of the universe, there's things that are explained. And even then, there's like things like in quantum physics, which I don't really care about. Yeah. In quantum physics, there's things like Gettier cases, which are evidence that there's going to be non-causal states of affairs, things that are not explained. So there's already evidence in quantum physics that there exists in which there's things that exist without explanation entirely. So there's evidence that things can exist in the known universe without explanation. So it doesn't seem like there's going to be any reason to believe that God explains it if it's not even a thing to be explained. It's not explained.
See, but these non-physical elements are what hold the universe together. That's what makes the universe possible to live in.
But you understand, you agree, you don't have an argument that these forces are explanandums, right? That they are explained by something else necessarily. You don't have an argument for that.
I would say forces can be explained by God, making the universe suitable.
No, I understand they can be, right? Ken is just going to be saying that it's possible that they're explained. But I'm saying you would agree, you're not going to have some proof that it's necessarily the case that they have explanation. So it can be the case it's not even explained by anything. So positing that a God explains something that's not explained is just going to be incoherent, right? It's not going to be clear why you're committing to this idea if it's not the case this thing is explained by anything else. You don't have any more evidence that it is explained by something than it's not explained by something. So now, although God can be an explanation if it is something to be explained, if it's not something to be explained, then God wouldn't explain something that doesn't have explanation. But even then, the God hypothesis is going to be terrible. There's going to be literally, like, let me ask you, what is going to be the motivations? Because we understand that actions are going to have some norm for which there's going to be action guiders, right? That agents only deliberate upon action given considerations of their mental states. So what explain God's desire to create a universe like ours, right? Because if you're talking about, like, let's just say naturalism. I'm not a naturalist, but let's say naturalism posits this specific improbable number of how the universe could have came into existence in this specific model, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure there is, right? And it's a highly improbable number. The issue is, now, first of all, there can be a God and no universe. That's going to be logically possible. A God desires to not make a universe. There could also be a universe and a God, but a God did not manifest a universe. A universe exists independently of a God to explain it. Or there could be a universe and no God. So it's not to be predicted that a God even... We're going to need an argument for why it is the case God would ever have a desire to make a universe. And then there's going to be a secondary argument that demonstrates that God has the specifically fine-tuned motivations to make this specific possible conception. Because unlike naturalism, it doesn't posit there's an infinite possible set. It has a very, very low number. But for the God hypothesis, it's infinitesimal, right? They're omnipotent, omniscient. They can conceive of any possible universe. They can make a universe where oxygen doesn't exist, right? Yeah. We don't need a breathe air, right? God is omnipotent. He can make a world where we don't depend upon air to suffice our being, right? So it's not going to be predicted at all, ever. It's like the paradox if I have an infinite-sided dice is it possible I roll 1? So the naturalism hypothesis is going to have infinite more reasons to believe a God doesn't exist, both for the reason that there's not going to be any warrant for the belief that God even has desires in the first place to make a universe, and then the specific universe that is ours.
Yeah, I've heard the argument before. I think the biggest problem with that argument is like, why would God do this, right? He's all above everything, you know, like why the hell the universe the way it is, right? I think the biggest flaw with that argument is assuming God has like a mindset similar to humanity. It's like the reason we do this is based on a motive, right? We have a motive to do, get up in the morning, we have a motive to do this and that.
That's what it means to be an agent. If you say that God has desires, beliefs, and knowledge, then that means he's going to have necessarily motivations that furnish beliefs, right? It can't be the case. It's like a rock. A rock falls, or an apple falls from a tree and hits the floor, not via volition, right? It's not going to be like it has internal motivations to deliberate on an action, right? It can't deliberate. It doesn't have internal components. What it means to say that something has a mind is that they have internal components that are necessary in deliberating a state of affairs, right? Like I could choose either to buy chocolate or vanilla ice cream if I have $1. Like, I can't get both. I can the other, but an apple doesn't choose whether or not it's going to fall from the tree from gravity or something like that. So if it is the case, God is an agent and he has a mind, they have motivations to make a universe. If you're saying he doesn't have a mind, then that's going to be compatible with the naturalists, right? They can just say it's a meta-natural thing, right? It's just another physical fact that exceeds our physical universe.
Yeah,
because he doesn't have a mind.
God doesn't have a mind. My argument is that we can't understand God's will to create the universe because he is infinitely more complex than us. It's like an ant trying to comprehend why the hell we built a skyscraper. Like,
so then if you're saying that, but to say it's incomprehensible means it's not compatible with conception. And if that's the case, it's not compatible with conception, then that means that we have no... I'm completely bald, and my head is completely full of hair. That's a contradiction, right?
I mean, not necessarily. We can't conceptualize black hole, but we know they exist. We can't conceptualize infinite density, but we know it exists out there.
Well, yeah, we can conceive of both of those. What it means to say that something is inconceptual is that means it's not compatible with the system of logic, right? Or the laws of logic, laws of thought, right? Like if I say I'm completely bald, I have no hair on my head at all, and I also say my head is completely full of hair, you can't conceive of the world in which simultaneously my head has no hair at all and has you can't conceive of that state of affairs. It's going to be inconceivable, right? Because you can't imagine me both completely bald and completely full of hair. That's what it means to say something's inconceivable. It's a contradiction. Yeah. But it's not. Yeah. So if you're saying that it's inconceivable,
yeah, we can't conceptualize God. He's outside of space and time.
So then that's bound by. You don't understand. That entails that it doesn't exist.
Not necessarily.
No, it does. It does necessarily.
You can't conceive.
No, it literally.
You can use concepts to grasp infinity. Yeah.
Hold on. What it means to say something is necessarily the case. In modal logic, necessity is a term that is considered a modal modifier or a modal category. Now, the scope is going to be logical, which means the set of axioms or laws of background information of logic, it's not going to be possible to be foreground or obtained in any possible world. So with logic, if you pause. Sorry. So in logic, if I say something is inconceivable, it's logically inconceivable, then that means it can't exist, right? You can't logically conceive. Like, it's like me saying I can fly like Superman. Now, it's not going to be nonologically possible, right? Given the scientific laws of gravity, it's not going to be scientifically possible I fly like Superman, but it's going to be logically possible. But it's not going to be logically possible. My entire body is completely hairless, and my body is completely covered in hair. You can't conceive of it. And if you're saying that God is inconceivable, that just means he's not going to be logically coherent. And if he's not logically coherent, he can't exist. What it means to say something is logically coherent means it's either conducive to the truth value of true, it exists, it's true that it exists, or it's false, it exists. If you're saying it can't be true or false, then that just means it's not the case God exists.
I would say that the word inconceivable doesn't mean it couldn't exist, though. We can't, in our minds, physically conceive infinity. Our minds cannot do that. Like, if we try to imagine an infinite amount of we couldn't.
So then I'm not clear what you mean by conceivability. Because in philosophy, the standard understanding of conceivability just means it's going to be consistent with the laws of logic. And if you're saying that something can be consistent with the laws of logic, but not conceivable, that means you're equivocating, and you're using a different definition of conceivability that is not the standard model. So I want to know what you mean by conceivability, because by my lights, it is going to be conceivable that infinity exists. There's no contradiction.
It's mind perception of, that's what I mean by conceivability. It's like we can perceive.
Listen, if I said be able to, you're not going to have an extra mental instrument in which you can determine I can't conceive it, right? It might be the case you can't conceive it, but you're not going to be able to, using your, what you cashed out to be conceivability, there's not going to be any possible way you can determine that I can't conceive that. You're only going to know that you can't conceive it.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Humans have the ability to conceive infinity. That's just a fact among humans.
No, that's actually false, because the standard understanding of conceivability is not going to be the proprietary term use that you're deploying, right? What it means to say something's conceivable is that it's logically coherent, so it can be conceptually established. But if you're just saying that what it means to say something is conceivable is not that it's logically coherent, rather that one can perceive or have some mental representation, then you're not going to ever know if anyone other than you can actually conceive it. So if it is conceivable, then you have no basis to say that God's not It may be not conceivable for you, but it may be conceivable for someone else.
All right. Well, I'm honestly not really here to play the word game. I'm pretty sure you know what I mean. We can't conceive God's intelligence. We can't conceive his mindset. We can't really put a Y on God because he's infinitely more complex than us. And that's the definition by the Bible. He's way above it. It's like a millipede trying to understand why humans.
The Bible's not, but the Bible's not going to be interpretable by any standard.
It's subjective. We have
No, it's not subjective. It's objectively uninterpretable. It's impossible that we interpret it.
How so? We have interpretations of the Bible.
Yeah, so I can give you an argument that's called the interpretation argument that dissolves theology entirely. If you want me to run the argument, it's going to be very complex. And it is 6 premises and a conclusion. But I can give you the argument, and I can demonstrate that it's impossible to interpret the Bible if you want that.
I mean, impossible wouldn't really make sense because we have interpretations of the Bible. I don't really get what you're meaning.
Yeah, so those interpretations are wrong, right? It's not interpretable, right? I can posit something's an apple, and someone can cut it in half and it could be cake. So someone's saying the way they're using interpretation is just not going to be true, right? Because what interpretation means is it's going to be the meaning of a string of symbols, right? Like a sentence. And if I say, I have a cat is just going to be a string of symbols. And that can have several meanings. Interpretation can be literal, where I'm giving some poetic thing that alludes to something else. It could be antithetical, complete opposite, where I'm expressing a sentence that has the opposite mental content. Or, I mean, there's going to be
there's no interpretation of anything then.
No, that's false. The interpretation argument
like that couldn't be interpreted, then how would everything else be interpreted?
I didn't say it's not. Listen, I didn't say that sentence is not interpretable. I said there's going to be different methodologies in which we can interpret it.
Yeah.
But the sentence, I have a cat, can be interpreted.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the sentence, I have a cat, can be interpreted. The Bible cannot. Listen, do you want to hear the argument or not? Do you want to hear the argument? Yeah, I mean, that's... Premise 1 is, if God exists in God does not possess phenomenological states. To reject the first premise, it's going to formally valid. You don't even know formal logic, so I don't even know why I have to... Like, I could just bullshit you and give you an invalid argument, and you probably thought it. But listen, the argument is valid, which you don't even know what that means. I suggest you read into formal logic, because you wouldn't be able to...
You're being a dickhead now, man. Just tell the argument.
Yeah, so do you reject the first premise? If God exists independently of the world, then God does not possess phenomenological states. Do you reject that premise?
Can you go into more detail? You're kind of just word playing.
I'm not word playing. So
I guess you explain it.
So you understand the antecedent of the material conditional, right?
The antecedent?
Yeah, the antecedent is going to be the first part, right? A material conditional or material implication is going to possess an antecedent and a consequent. So it's going to be an if, P, then Q. So the first premise is if P, then Q, which is if God exists independently of the world, then Q, God does not possess phenomenological states. So I'm going to start with the P. If God exists independently of the world. You understand that, right? It's just going to say if God exists independently of the world. Then this is entailed. Okay, so the entailment would be God does not possess phenomenological states.
Okay.
So do you reject that premise?
I mean, God doesn't exist outside the existence everywhere.
That's not what the argument is talking about. So do you reject the premise? If God exists independently of the world, then God doesn't possess phenomenological states.
So what phenomenological states are you talking about?
Any phenomenological states. You know what a phenomenological state is, right?
Sorry, what?
Do you know what phenomenological states are?
I've heard of it.
Okay, but do you know what it is?
Explain.
Okay, so the answer is no. So phenomenological state is just going to be defined as a state of furnished mental content via an environment. So if you want, I can read it like that, but that's going to be even more wordy and verbose. So if God exists independently of the world, then God doesn't possess a state of furnished mental content via an environment. Do you reject that premise?
That's a right premise. Influenced by things.
Okay, so now the second premise is going to be God exists independently of the world. Do you deny that?
He does not. He's not independent of the world.
So you believe that God in the universe existed infinitum? God never created the universe?
No, God exists outside the universe, but also within it.
No. Listen, that doesn't even make sense. God's not physical, right? So only physical things exist in the universe, right? God is going to have access into the universe and can obviously produce effect within it. Yeah. He's not contained in the universe, right? He's going to have some... Exactly. So he's not... obviously you believe that God existed prior to the universe, right? And that he existed independent of the world.
Yeah.
Unlike a human. A human depends on a world to exist. God doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay, so you would accept premise 2.
Sure.
Okay, so now the third premise would just be... We can just say conclusion 1 or premise 3, doesn't matter. So the conclusion would just be necessarily that God does not possess phenomenological states. So now let's go on to premise 4. If God does not possess phenomenological states, then we don't have background information about God's phonological dispositions in a given environment. So to break that down, we understand the antecedent, which is if God doesn't have phenomenological states. And the consequent is then we don't have background information about God's phonological dispositions in a given environment. What that means is phonology is just going to be it's going to be like a subsidiary subject within linguistics, which is just going to deal with sounds, right? Like mouth sounds. So let's say I'm with a native tribe. A native tribe within a specific state of affairs or environment is going to express utterances or phonological dispositions, we can say, dependent on that environment, right? Like if this native is hunting with a spear and he sees a rabbit, which is what he's hunting, he might shout for the rest of the hunters to attack, right? So given that environment or that state of affairs, they're going to have a set of specific utterances that are going to be appropriated, or phonological dispositions, right? Like sounds that they might make.
Yeah. So why would he be bound by that, though? Why would he be bound by if blank and blank? He doesn't have to adhere to the laws of the universe.
This doesn't have to do with the universe. First of all, these are laws of logic. Logic doesn't deal with the universe.
Yeah. Why would laws of logic have to apply to being outside of the
Okay, so do you think the proposition God exists is true?
Yeah, that's a true statement.
Okay, so then that means God is bounded by logic. Only propositions or things.
Not necessarily.
Yes.
The
only things,
conception of God.
Only propositions work under logic.
Okay.
If the existence of God is propositional, then it's bound by logic. You're conflating nomology and logic, right? You know, like me flying like Superman because the gravity is different from me being completely bald and completely. Like, do you think God can exist and not exist in the same time? Like, there's a point where it's both true and false. He exists. No, right?
He can remove himself from any environment. Yeah. Yeah.
No, you would take it that it could be both true and false at the same time. Exist at one point. You do.
Yeah.
Okay, then I guess you just conceded my point. I guess I won. Right? Because my point here is that,
what do you mean? God can not exist in a single point.
Well, listen, if God can be both true and false, then that means he can't abide by logic. He can't be true or false. He can only be both true and false.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that means that now you just conceded it's not true God exists.
It's true and false.
Yeah, so it's not true that God exists.
For us right now, it is true God exists. For somebody in hell, God does not exist.
No, listen, you can't be both conducive to the system.
Why would it being outside of logic be bound by those same laws? It makes sense in our monkey brains, but why would that be conducive to being way higher in intelligence?
Do you think that God can only be true or false that he exists?
In my monkey brain, he is true, right? But
so then it can't, listen, there's going to be a dichotomy.
It's way outside. We can establish laws of logic that make sense to us, but the amount of intelligence is infinitely more intelligent than us out there.
That doesn't matter. You're not understand. You just listen. I would suggest you like read into formal logic because you really don't understand what.
Yeah, no,
if you
I understand what you're saying because
no, you don't at all. Listen, you don't at all. If you read into logic and the metaphysics of logic, you don't understand. Let's say I'll give you a year, and if you studied this prominently, you would reflect on your past self and think you sounded like a complete fool. So what it means to say God is illogical means he can either be true or false at any given point. But you're saying that at a given point, God can be true, that he exists, and not false. No, so that means God is necessarily bounded by the system.
By human rules of logic. Like, okay,
human rules.
Try to
logic. Listen.
He doesn't have the capability for that intelligence. Now,
what does that matter?
It's as if God was trying to project his intelligence onto us. We couldn't comprehend the amount of stuff he knows. It's infinite.
What does this have to do with? Listen, what does a bug comprehending logic have to do with logic? God being logical.
What I'm saying is our basis of logic does not apply to somebody who has a higher intelligence than us. If
okay.
A bug's logic.
But you understand what you just conveyed was a proposition. And in order for that proposition to go through, you would have to draw an inference. And if it's the case that you're giving an inference for something outside that logical system, that means it's non-inferable, which is a category error. I mean, it can't be the case. I just explained this. It's either going to be the case that at any given point, God is either true or false, or at every given point, God is neither true or false. But you're saying that right now, God is true, meaning he's conducive to the system. So that would necessitate that he is bound by logic.
Mm-hmm. So in my mind,
so God is bound by logic. There's no dispute. It's either the case God neither is true or false that he exists, or it's the case he necessarily is either one or the other.
So yes, in my mind, it is true.
It's not about our mind, right?
It definitely is because our logic stems from.
Yeah, you gotta educate yourself, bro. I'm not putting up with that crap. You're like completely ignorant. Go take some courses, read up on some literature. You sound like a moron. Next person. Is there anyone else here who? No. There's a thing on my screen. Anyone here has any questions, arguments in the chat? If you want to come up, you can request, or you can invite others. Matthew, why are you requesting? You already agreed God doesn't exist. Right? It's not the case that it's true God exists. That's my thing. Now this Luke dude is asking to request. I don't think you have enough followers. So Luke, I mean Matthew, before so you would agree it's not necessarily going to be true or false God exists, right? It's not necessarily the case God is either true or false.
Okay, can I explain my argument?
No, I'm asking you, is it the case that God is necessarily either true or false?
Those are absolutes. I don't answer an absolute. I'm trying to give you the premise of my argument.
Okay, then you can leave if you're not going to engage. That's fine. You didn't even have an argument, right? You already said that you're not bound by logic. So it can't be the case you have an argument. An argument is a unit of logic. Are you 18 by any chance? Are you over 18? No? Okay. They left themselves. I didn't even touch them. Yeah, Matt, I would suggest reading into logic. Do you think that's a contradiction? That clearly you're asking. Okay, someone else came up.
Yo, what's good, man?
What's up, Track? Are you over the age of 18?
Yeah, I'm 18. I'm 18.
Okay. Do you believe any good reasons to believe in God? Do you have an argument?
Yeah, I do. I actually have I just have one question for you. Can I just ask it for just? Okay, if I can just ask you that one question, it will come back to this. I promise.
I guess depending on the question, I might answer.
The question is, what is your good reason that you don't think God exists?
Okay, well, first it's going to be the interpretation argument. So it's logically impossible that we ever stem any epistemic, that we have any interpretation of any theological text. That's falsification for theology entirely, or more so an undercut or defeater. So that's going to be motivation for why. But that's just going to make it, there's no reason to ever believe in a theology. Like I can be a deist and believe that God exists. But there's not going to be any reason at all to believe in Christianity, in Islam, in Hinduism, any of that. I mean, there's no reason to believe in God at all. I don't think God has any explanons for which he explains. It's a completely ad hoc justo story. Depending on commitments, we could get falsification. Like if you take a God is the Abrahamic God with the triune properties, we can falsify him given cases like the logical problem of evil, the notion. Another undercutting defeater for another type of evil is going to be the evidential problem. There's also going to be like the second horn of the Euthyphro dilemma is going to be seen as a falsification. If you're to say that things are moral in virtue of God's subjective morality, and then objective morality is going to be essentially the claim, which is going to entail contradiction. So, God is another one said God's omnipotent but can't do evil acts, right? That's just going to be that's obviously a contradiction, right? If God is capable of actuating any logical possible state of affairs, and you say that it's impossible God does evil, then it's by definition he's not omnipotent. Also, like there's like
God is just love. God is love. I mean, he's like he created us for a reason. We're here for a reason. We have a whole purpose.
Do you have an argument? Wait, why do you believe God made us for a reason?
Like, we wouldn't be here for no reason. Let
me grant you that God made us. Do you have access to God's reason for making us?
And do you have access of the reason that he did it?
That's not engaging with my question.
No, it is because
no, that's not, because what I'm asking. No, what I'm asking is a yes question, and you're just recapitulating the question back at me. That's not answering the question.
It's called faith, by the way. So yes, I have faith that he does.
Okay, so then you just conceded your position's irrational. That's fine.
Irrational.
Yeah, so my position, I wouldn't believe so. No.
You don't have free will at all. So you don't know the satellite being controlled by one thing, by someone telling you something, or do you have free will at all? Because if you have free will, let me ask you.
Whoa, you do not know. Wait. You do not know what free will is. What it means to say we have free will is that there's going to be internal volitionary conditions that determine some outcome. And determinism just posits that we don't have an internal condition, right? That purely external conditions are going to necessitate some outcomes conclusion, right? That there's going to be a set of external like antecedents that furnish a consequence. You're muted, by the way.
Sorry, my fault. I said I was going to say.
Did you hear me?
No, I did hear you. I did not know.
Yeah. So do you have an argument that proves we have internal conditions?
Yeah, that's what I want to get to. But you're not letting me speak.
But you understand that.
I understand where you're coming from. I do.
So, no. I didn't even say what I was going to say. You just said, yeah, I know where you're coming from. I
heard what you were saying.
No, you didn't. Listen, I didn't even say it yet. We can have the psychological inclination or disposition to believe, or this dogmastic attitude psychologically, that we do have free will and that we choose our own actions. And that's going to be compatible with determinism. So you can think, yeah, determinism is the antithesis of free will.
Oh, okay. So yeah, free will. Okay, free will. Yeah.
No, the antithesis, the opposite of free will, is determinism.
Oh,
so yeah. So it's going to be compatible that we have beliefs, and we have the belief that we're volitionarily deliberating actions. That's going to be possible with determinism. It just means that there isn't going to be an internal system.
Okay.
So you can believe that you're making decisions, but you don't know if you're making decisions. The only way you would know that you have free will is somehow we have access into like a remote in which we can repeat the same state of affairs infinitely.
So you don't believe that you can have control of your actions, or at least you don't know that you have control.
No. You can have the belief that you have the control of your actions and still not have free will.
Okay, but then how does that even make sense? If you know what you're going to do,
that's why free. Yeah, free will. No. What is an internal system that or internal conditions that are going to determine some outcome, along with the external conditions. But determinism says there's only external conditions that determine an outcome's conclusion. So the only way you know if you had free will is if we had a remote and we can reverse time infinitely. So we can observe the same state of affairs infinitely. So what it means to say that free will exists, or rather determinism, is given the state of affairs ad infinitum, it's never going to obtain some different conclusion. We're never going to know that. So it's impossible we determine free will exists. So there's no reason to believe we have free will.
So okay, so I guess if you want to say that, it shouldn't make think that. But I obviously do believe we have free will. Everyone on Earth.
Yeah, because you're dumb. Obviously, you're going to believe you have free will because you don't know any philosophy. If you maybe knew how to justify claims, you'll know it's epistemically impossible to derive the conclusion we have free will. It's an asinine commitment to take. It's like me saying I believe there is no God, and then I have no reason or evidence or justification or any of that. That's how dumb you sound. I'm gonna just believe in it because I believe in it.
Justification on it.
I do. What do you mean? Justification that we don't have free will?
No, you don't have justification that you believe that we don't have free will. Yeah, exactly. No. You believe that we don't have at least we can't.
No, I never said that. I don't have the belief that we don't have free will. Right? I'm agnostic.
Oh, so you're agnostic.
You know agnostic?
So are you so you're not atheist?
I just told you I am atheist.
Oh, okay. So if you're atheist, then tell me this. Why do I'm gonna ask you this, and I'm gonna repeat.
No, listen. Why do you
think bad things happen? Why do you think bad things happen?
What you're supposed to do is give me an argument for why God exists. That's what you have. Now you can admit argument if you're not going to engage by actually.
No, I don't know. I think you're putting me on mute because I'm not muting me. Why are you muting me?
Because you're not listening.
Letting me talk. No, you're not letting me talk.
Yeah, I know. That's the point of muting you, to stop you from talking.
God,
so listen, do you have an argument for the existence of God or not?
Yes. Do you believe that evil things just happen, or do you believe that they come from something?
So what's the argument?
So the argument is that if you believe and if you know all these things, how can you know that the opposite is true? How can you know that if there's evil, then good is there? How can you know that if you have free will, then something is giving you the baseline, the foundation for that? Tell me that.
Hold on. That's not an argument. What an argument is, no, that's not. What an argument is going to be a set of premises and a conclusion that follows necessarily. That's a deductive argument. So in order to give an argument, you would have to deploy rules of inferences under the axioms of classical logic, because that's what's going to be the mode of debate, that system or framework of logic, and then give a set of premises, rules of inferences, and a conclusion that would be entailed as a corollary. So if I say all are mortal, Socrates is mortal, therefore Socrates is man, that's going to be an invalid argument, right? Because it could be the case that Socrates is mortal and men are mortal, but also ducks are mortal. But if I say Socrates is man, all men are mortal, therefore Socrates is mortal, that's a valid argument. Because given the consideration of Socrates being a man, given the fact that all men are mortal, since he's in that containment relation or categorization of men that adhere to mortality or in here, then it follows that he's going to be mortal. That's what a valid argument is.
Okay.
So now you have to give me a valid argument, a set of premises, in a conclusion.
Then that's what I'm trying to do, though. So I'm gonna just set out the foundation, and then we're gonna move on from there. Does that sound like
no? What I want is no.
Yeah, I'm just saying from the start to the beginning, like you said. I'm gonna come into a conclusion. It's all gonna come to that. I just want to know though that we were monkeys all the way in the past, and then 6 million years later.
So what's premise one?
The premise one, we're gonna start from the first book. Let's say Genesis, right? Okay, let's go from Genesis. So Adam and Eve first existed. Wait.
What's the first premise?
The first premise is that there were first two human beings. They didn't just, they can't just come out from to just exact how human evolution landed to humans and how did we evolve.
Yeah. So first of all, no one said they're committed to evolution. I don't know where you even got that. Right?
No, atheism is stupid.
Yeah, retard. No one said that they're committed to there being evolution because I'm an atheist. That's not entailed. So I can be an atheist and not hold to evolution. That doesn't matter. What I'm asking for is an argument. You just gave me a narrative that isn't a set of premises. Okay, great. He dropped. Thank goodness. I was going to kick him off myself. It's impossible to prove.
You're bound by laws, not be able to break them.
God is not bound by physical laws, not logical laws.
Yeah.
They're two different things.
Why would he be bound by logical laws?
Listen, in order to say something exists, it must be bound by logic. If God does not exist, and it's neither true or false, God exists, then he's not bound by logic and cannot partake in existence. Because existence is only constituted in two truth value. True, it's either true it exists or it doesn't. Now, is it true it exists?
Yeah.
Okay, God is bound by logic. Simplicator. There's no more else to discuss about. If it is the case you're committed to the idea, it's possible God is either true or false. He is necessarily bound by logic. If you're saying God does not abide by any laws, then God does not abide by ontology. He can't exist.
So my question for you is, if God was bound by logic, how would that disprove his existence?
It doesn't. Being bound by logic isn't the argument. Every theist, go to apologists, go to a professional apologist who their whole life work is arguing for God, and they're going to concede God is bounded by logic. Like does is not have someone commit to the idea God's logical. Everyone agrees upon that unanimously. Only idiots who don't know philosophy and don't know what it means to say something is illogical makes that claim because they're asinine of what they're even saying.
Man, buddy can't have an argument without fucking. That's crazy.
Okay, well then you can just leave.
Yes.
Okay, great. Dang, these theists. I'm gonna just stop doing TikTok live for real. Anyone else here want to come up? Yeah, Matthew, you're not coming back up at all. Listen, if you want, I can give you material to read. Or like I said, you can add me on Discord. What's up? Your background's way too noisy.
Oh yeah, I'm in Kroger right now.
All right, well, I'm gonna just bring you back up when your background's less noisy. There's no way we can properly communicate. Are you an atheist? Okay, well then, I don't think there's real any point. Yeah, Matt, you're not coming back up. I'm not adding you like a third time. Like I said, if you want, I can have you talk with people who are proficient in the subject and on Discord, and I can have you can actually understand. Seemingly, you can't understand what I'm trying to. Like you're just too thick-skulled. Yeah, constantly requesting is not going to change my view on you. Are you over the age of 18?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait, what do you say? Well, I'm just going to start off by saying that I was raised Christian, and then I was spiritual, sort of, and then I'm atheist now. But
okay.
I do think there is probably good reasons to believe in God. I think I would start off with, obviously, sorry, what do you, sorry, I have to first ask you, what's your definition of a God or a creator? Like, in terms of the universe and life and consciousness, let's say.
I don't know what you mean by, so you're just asking me what I define God to be?
Yeah, exactly, sorry.
Yeah, I just take, well, I mean, I can give a specific definition of God, which is going to be necessarily the Christian God. And that's the argument I usually attack. Sorry, I mean a specific God I attack. But the term God is just a vacuous term, right? It's just like a subsuming term. So it's just like a category. So there's going to be a set of different models that are going to be incompatible with one another identically, but are still going to be, constituting the nomer God. Like the Islamic God and the Christian God are not going to be co-equal.
I know, but is God the creator to you, or is it goodness? Like, what is it? Is God? Are you saying in terms of is there a creation?
Well, like I'm saying, in terms of a set of models of God that might be compatible with what I consider the term use of God. Like if someone says the universe is God, I prove God exists because the universe exists. Or if I say God is just the mental states, you have mental states, therefore God exists. Those are going to be like things I'm not going to consider God, right? There's going to be like a specific definition that I cash out the term God. Well, not really. There's going to be like I said, a subsumption. So a set of possible models that I will allow to be considered God. So I mean, I guess one of the most vital things are going to be that he created the universe. That's going to be one.
Okay, so in terms of the creator, I would argue only because time is, to me, not relative. I think it's super, well, I don't want to say paranormal, but I think even, let's just say apes talking and apes thinking, and just generally, like there's a lot of like not normal things going on, but everyone just pretend, like for example, I'll be honest with you, man. I'll be honest with you. Science is as like fallacious as religion and spirituality to me.
First of all, I don't think you know what it means to say something's fallacious.
Yeah, no, I do. When there's no objective backing to it, that's what I believe. Because science.
Wait. That's not what fallacious means. Right? There can be subjective facts that are not fallacious. What it means to say something's fallacious.
No, dude. Nothing subjective is a fact, though.
Yeah, there are subjective facts.
No, the definition of subjective is it's not relative to facts. It's relative to feelings.
No, that's not what subjective means. Subjective means that there's going to be a fact of the matter that's determined by subject. Objective means that there's going to be a fact of the matter determined by objects. Like me saying, I think this ice cream tastes good.
So this is, I guess, that is a...
So I can say it's either true or false. I believe that the ice cream tastes good. Say that's true or false to me, subjectively. But it's not going to mean because for me chocolate tastes good, that chocolate is going to be an objective fact, right? The taste or the quality experience of chocolate for which we can qualify as good is going to be subject dependent, right? It depends on an agent who tastes chocolate and has that experience that they label good. So obviously, it's not like I can't determine chocolate ice cream tastes good using the universe, like facts, like natural facts. But I can prove objectively that the Earth exists. That's going to be a natural fact that isn't going to depend on subjects to determine. That's what the subject-object distinction is.
All I'm saying is if you saying the ice cream is good, and if good in itself is subjective, then what's reality to you then? Like what do you mean?
What are you talking about?
Like if you're just talking, yeah. In that case, you're siding with the possibility of there being divinity because
what do you mean divinity?
What do you? So you believe in science, right? Since you're atheist, you believe in science and evolution, and we came from great apes, right?
That has nothing to do with atheism.
What is? Wait, what are you talking? It has a direct correlation to do with atheism. You have to have a.
No. Yeah, so that's going to be a possible synthetic fact. Do you know what atheism means? All it means is the lack of credence in the existence of God. Right? I can also reject science and still not believe in a God. That's all it means to be atheist. I don't believe in God. It doesn't mean I have to be committed to
I know, I'm giving you the credence, though. That's the good reason, right? That's the credence is the good reason.
No. What do you, oh my God, atheism means you lack credence in the existence of God. I lack credence in the existence of God. That doesn't mean I'm necessarily committed to being a scientific realist, right? That doesn't mean I must commit to science
that's
to
fair,
explain everything. Yeah,
that's fair, because I'm not a scientific realist either. Yeah, I'm not a scientific realist either. I just the thing is, I did go through different phases in life, like religious phase, spiritual phase, and now I'm kind of.
Listen, I'm not interested in all this meta. Do you have an argument for why God exists or not?
Yes, I do. Because
what's the argument?
There's, I would say, perfect designer theory. Because if something was off in the universe, there would be no life on Earth. I would say the fact that life is divine in itself is a good reason to believe in God.
First of all, I would need an argument to support that proposition. But
I would say that there's no other thing that creates life other than.
No. You're saying that you said if the way the universe is was to be any degree off, it wouldn't permit life. Right? That's a claim that would need an argument. So that I'm not going to accept that. But listen, I can grant that. That doesn't mean God is going to explain it.
Do you think mathematically the improbability of life can be a good reason to believe in God?
No, because God's probability is going to be infinitely less likely.
No, I'm saying the mathematical improbability of life even being on Earth. Forget consciousness, even life being on Earth. Do you think that mathematical improbability hints to a divinity or no?
I just gave you the answer. Did you not hear what I said?
Repeat it, sorry.
Yeah, the answer was no, it's not going to be motivating that God exists because a God is infinitely less likely.
That doesn't feel that you're not really providing proof that there's no God that exists.
I know I haven't provided any.
So there is no. So I guess technically there is no good reason to not believe in God.
Why do you say that?
Because you're basically going off your own subjective point of view only.
I'm not going off a subjective point of view. I have arguments which you wouldn't understand anyways. I have like dozens of reasons and arguments, even a priori cases and falsifications for the existence of God.
In all powerful, all loving God, like an Abrahamic God, of course, innocent humans die every day. I'm not going to be like that, but I do think there's a chance that the creator could say, I know this kind of is out of the, I would say outside the box of thinking, but I would say there's a chance that the creator is a random chaotic evil creator, evil. I'm just saying, if there's a high probability of life being on Earth, right? Theoretically, there's a very, very low chance of us even being here talking like this. Let's just say, like people like to see synchronicities. Yeah, but infinitely though. That's what I'm saying. If there's a limit and no limit, then there's some sort of.
You understand that the naturalistic hypothesis is going to be a very low number in probability that the universe is so highly fine-tuned, right? A very small number.
But what's natural to you? What's natural to you?
Oh my God.
What do you mean by naturalistic?
Yeah, I'm not going to engage with you. Are you over the age of 18?
Yeah.
You are?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have an argument for why God exists?
I ain't got an argument, but I want to hear your argument about how God isn't reason.
Well, the debate proposition is if there's any good reason to believe in God, but sure, one, I can give you my understand why God doesn't exist. So you take it God is going to be a hypothesis for some phenomenon, or some set of data. Mm-hmm. That he explains something.
Yes.
Give me one thing that God explains.
He explains that there's peace on earth, and when we die, and when we how do we say it? When you die, you go up to heaven or hell. That's what he explains.
So that's the presupposed heaven and hell, and those are ontological commitments that are epistemically infeasible to actually use. That's not relevant. If you're saying that God explains peace, then that's because I'm an atheist and I'm not committed to God, so I don't derive my peace from God. So I have peace independent of the commitment to God. So that's already going to be like some internal motivation for why that proposition is false. But do you have an argument that proves that because peace exists, therefore God exists? No, you don't. You can't prove because peace exists.
Look at the moon. Look at the moon, and then look at yourself in the mirror. Take a hard look in the mirror. Where do you come from? Where do you come from?
There can be a God who desires not to make peace. So that's not even going to be predicted under the God hypothesis. So that's not even going to be evidence for.
But look at the mirror and look at the moon and look at the sun. Look at the stars. Where do you come from?
What the hell?
Where do you come
from?
Look
at the moon. Look at the sun. Look at
my fault. Where do you come from?
What are you asking me?
Where do you come from?
I come from my home state. Are you asking where?
You come from God. God created you.
Yeah, that's the presupposed God. Do you have an argument? You said you're not going to give an argument God exists, right? So it's not going to be the case. Anyone cares about you thinking a God exists, right? There's no reason to believe God exists. That's the point of this lie. You ask me to give my argument, and then you respond with, oh, well, that's false because God exists. But that's just to beg the question, right? So if you want, I can give the actual motivations, and you can give rational criticisms without just saying, oh, well, God exists, and actually engage. Or you can just, I guess, leave. Because just saying after every time I say something, oh, well, okay, well, he left. This live been long. So, hold on, what's your name? Human.
It's good, monkeyboy.
What's up? Do you think, do you have any argument for the existence of God?
Yeah.
The argument is?
Well, just to preface it, I was an atheist my whole life, and now I would call myself a Christian. So I guess the best person to say it would be a former atheist. But I think God exists because I don't believe in the argument that there has to be an intelligent designer. I just think no matter how intelligent you have to be, it definitely comes from somewhere. And I want to bring in science and math to prove that, not to just say that.
I'm not, yeah, so you have an argument, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the argument?
The argument is, using science and math, you can explain the beginning of the universe. And that technically is God, but we don't know if it's a being, if it's intelligent or not. But we do know what started the universe.
What started the universe?
Basically, I don't like how people say they bring in quantum physics and like that. I go more of a natural route. Like, I think we put in the equation of what was before the universe, right? Technically nothing. We would just call that zero. And then...
I don't think there's a before the universe.
Well, if there was nothing, yeah, that's the paradox. Like, if there was anything before or after, what would it be? Something or nothing.
No, I don't think there was a before the universe.
Yeah, if there was no before.
No, listen, you understand my view. The universe is supposed, by physicists and just generally understood to encompass space-time, right? So when you say what's before the universe, that's like asking what's before time, right? Before is a temporal notion.
Yeah,
it's going to be incoherent to ask what's before the universe. There is no before the universe. The universe existed always.
Exactly. So the paradox is infinite existence, or whatever it was that, which I'm saying there is.
How does a paradox refute anything?
Well, then it would just not make sense to us. The only thing that would make sense to us would be they're not time existing back then, you know? But I do agree with that. What you just said, time not existing before the universe. I agree with that point.
No, I'm saying there is no before the universe. I'm not saying there's no time before the universe. Yeah, the universe is eternal. There was never a point in which the universe did not exist.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Okay, so then nothing created the universe if it existed eternally.
Yeah, if there was no creator, it always existed. If it always existed, wouldn't that make more proof of a creator?
No, it wouldn't. It's not created. I understand creation is I don't even make sense of creation. It's just incoherent in my view.
That's the problem. That's the problem with existence. It's unexplainable. But we can only explain it in these terms.
No, it doesn't have to be explained. Why would you think it has to have an explanation?
It doesn't have to be explained. Or we could try.
Or
this is my opinion.
There's no... Okay, that's a good opinion then. I don't like get that yet an argument. Also, you're talking way too slow for me to even be interested, to be honest.
Hello, you fool. How are you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm not a fool. I'm not talking with you.